If you own a dog, you probably go for walks on a daily basis. If you don't own a dog, you might still go for walks, or even take a jog on a treadmill regularly. I think we could all agree that, for the most part, walking isn't all that tiring. It's generally a pretty laid-back form of exercise. But what if you took that to another level? What if you walked to the extreme? It seems that what we believe is the longest walkable single distance on Earth is that from South Africa to the far northeastern Russian city of Magadan. At no point would you need to use even a small boat to ferry across a river, because the entire route is made up of roads with bridges. To go further into northeastern Russia, you'd need to cross through terrain that isn't currently walkable. A real person walking this route at a sustainable pace would need about 3 years to complete the trip. As an example, the longest known ongoing religious pilgrimage is by a man named Arthur Blessitt, who's walked over 40,000 miles since 1969. His walk isn't contiguous, and has therefore included all 7 continents, where he has carried a large cross and preached his Christian beliefs. He claims to have covered over 43,000 miles, or 69,202 kilometers, through 324 nations, island groups, and territories. He also claims to have travelled every ocean and walked on all 7 continents, including Antarctica. This is very impressive. Let's try to find out about some records set by, simply, walking in completed in a shorter amount of time. There's actually been a handful of such records. For example, in 1976, Jesus Jesse Castaneda, born in Nuevo Casa Grandes, Mexico, set the record for the longest distance walked in 24 hours. Castaneda was actually paralyzed at 8 years old after a tragic car crash and was told that he would never walk again. But 6 months later, Castaneda was on his feet again and would later take inspiration from a man by the name of Pedro Castaneda, who travelled with the Spanish conquistadors and repeatedly turned down offers to ride a horse instead of walking. Finally, on September 18, 1976, Jesse Castaneda would begin his 24-hour journey, walking an incredible 142 miles in one day. Funny enough, there was also someone who decided to set the record for walking the longest distance in 24 hours backward. Anthony Thornton, who says he was born to walk, set the Guinness World Record for walking backward for a distance of 95.4 miles in 24 hours, beginning on December 31st, 1989. Thornton wasn't the only man, or even the first, to set a backward walking record though. Lawrence Wingo also decided to give it a shot, although he had a slightly different goal. Wingo, who had owned a small diner until the Great Depression forced him and many others out of business, happened to hear a conversation between a group of children who were discussing the sudden trend of attempting stunts and setting records that had ramped up during the Depression. At one point, one of the children stated that every possible record had already been set, and there was nothing left to do. Wingo, who hadn't even given this any thought before, suddenly interjected to point out that no one had tried walking backward around the world. It was at this moment that he decided to attempt this stunt himself and see if he could set a new record. On April 15th, 1931, Wingo left Santa Monica, California, backward, of course, and wouldn't return until after he had arrived in Istanbul, Turkey, 1 year later. Though he didn't technically walk backward around the whole world, he did set the Guinness World Record for the longest distance ever walked backward, and still holds this record even in death today. Now, moving forward, literally, there are, of course, many other people who have set records for walking. Well, normally. One man by the name of Jean Béliveau walked 46,600 miles over a period of 11 years, from 2000 to 2011, to raise awareness for child abuse around the time of a United Nations initiative with a similar goal. Béliveau walked through 64 countries, met 4 Nobel Peace Prize winners during his journey, and wore out 49 pairs of shoes. Another activist who literally changed her name to Peace Pilgrim spent January 1953 through July 1981 walking back and forth across the US to protest militarism throughout the Korean War. Though she stopped counting after 25,000 miles, Peace Pilgrim continued to walk in the name of activism until her death. Still, these two were not the only ones who decided to walk for a cause. Ignacio Din Mulyaha walked 20,505 miles beginning in March 2013 and ending 3 years later in an attempt to advocate for different environmental causes. Ignacio walked through 31 countries before returning to his home in Spain. George Megan made an earlier attempt to set the walking record back in 1977, and he ended up travelling for 19,019 miles across 2 continents before wrapping things up in 1983. Other adventurers would test their own limits too, such as Stephen Newman, who walked 15,509 miles in 4 years, David Kunst, who trekked 14,450 miles in 4 years, Prem Kumar, who spent the same amount of time walking 10,500 miles, and Konstantin Rengatin, who is considered by many to be the first man to walk around the world. Rengatin travelled 16,700 miles over 4 years in the 1890s. And even though the Guinness World Record book doesn't currently keep records for the longest distance walked in general, the last time they did, the recognition was given to a Belgian man named George Holtje, who walked 452 laps around a circuit in Ninove, Belgium, from July 19th until July 25th, 1986. Holtje walked for a total of 418.49 miles with 0 rest stops. He was recorded to have been moving for 98.78% of the 6 days, 10 hours and 58 minutes. Thus, the longest distance ever walked seems to depend on the context you are looking at. There have been many records set, and many more attempts to do so, when it comes to taking the simple act of walking to the extreme. So, next time you feel tired while walking your dog or using the treadmill, just be grateful you aren't one of those crazy adventure seekers